Georgie Bell, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Well, but it's nice to see you. Yeah.
Yeah, you too. Has it been hard to finally stop moving, or are you actually enjoying a little bit of a breather?
It's actually been really lovely. Obviously, it's not been easy for a lot of people out there with what's going on.
Mm.
We're what, 8, 9 weeks into lockdown now in the UK.
Yeah.
The thing I worry about most is the bar and restaurant industry. A lot of my friends are bartenders and they own bars and they work in restaurants, and it's hit them really hard. So truth be told, I cannot wait to get back out. As much as I love cooking,
Yeah.
and actually going to a restaurant and going to a bar and sort of clinking glasses with friends and all of that. But personally for me, it's been business as usual, albeit the travel. So without that, but everything's just been full steam ahead.
Yeah, I guess it's just a sort of reframing, really. We're all able to keep busy in different ways if we can, and if we can't, it's about just sort of like holding on until things start up again.
Yeah, we're lucky-ish in the fact that we bought a house back last September. So a lot of the lockdown in our free time has been spent doing a lot of DIY. So it's kept us very busy.
Yeah, nice. So to sort of get into the meat of everything, you've now spent 8 or more years in the whiskey industry. Do you reckon you're getting close to that point where you've learned everything there is to know?
Absolutely not. I think there's so much to learn within the whiskey industry, within Scotch itself and whiskey as a category. I've been in whiskey for my whole career, so about 10 years now, but almost 8 as a global ambassador. So that's 8 years of traveling 6 months of the year or more. So that's why when you're asking about, am I enjoying the rest? I'm like, yes, it's nice to have a normal sleeping pattern for once.
Yeah.
I think whiskey is evolving. Scotch whiskey is evolving. When I started out 10 years ago, the whiskey industry wasn't like it is today, in terms of the way people drink whiskey, in terms of the people involved with it, in terms of the breadth of what's on our shelves. 10 years ago, there was no such thing as a no age statement whiskey, which is funny actually if you think about it, that now that's quite a significant part of a lot of the single malt play.
Yeah, it feels like they've been around for longer, but yeah, I guess they're still quite a new innovation.
Yeah, absolutely. So within Scotch, I think, obviously we have the Scotch Whisky Association laws that we abide by, the regulations, but wild whiskey and the emergence of it is keeping us on our toes so much, that there's so much innovation happening within Scotch whisky that it's very exciting. I'm learning new stuff honestly every day from what I'm reading and what I'm tasting, and new innovations out there, not only in Scotch but across the world.
Yeah, it's interesting to sort of look back on it and see actually how much has changed so recently. And as we are looking back, can you remember what it first was that got you interested in Scotch and made you think, yeah, I could make a career of this?
Well, I was living in Edinburgh at the time. I did my undergrad degree there at the university, and I was bartending. Best thing that ever happened to me was getting a job behind the bar. I think it should be mandatory for everybody to spend at least 6 months working in hospitality, mainly also because a lot of people don't have manners associated with how you should talk to people in hospitality. But no, bartending was an incredible thing for me. And I slowly but surely learned about every spirit on my back bar, and Scotch was always that area that I was really unfamiliar with, and it was a flavour that I associated with my dad. One of his favourite whiskies is Lafroig. So as you know, when the only thing you know is big, like smoky, peaty whiskey, you're like, oh my gosh, what is that? But slowly fell into Scotch whiskey through cocktails, actually. And then I think the moment I realised I was like, oh, I could push this further was when I started working at the Scotch Malt Whisky Society up in Edinburgh. I was at their members' room on Queen Street. And that's when sort of the puzzle came together, as it were. I'll just pause for a sec. Sorry if we take a break in the interview and we cut that a little bit.
Oh yeah, we've got talented editors on this.
That's fine.
Just as as an aside, and maybe B-roll, I don't know, but Lafroig was probably my first whiskey, but that pushed me away from whiskey for almost a decade after. Like, my first experience of that was not one that I wish to repeat. But I'm glad that I gave it another chance, and well, now here I am. But yeah, Lafroig is heavy going.
Yeah, can you hear that background?
A little bit of bumping.
Sorry. We thought it was a good idea when we moved into this house to take all of the doors off every room on the ground floor.
Oh, sure.
To make it a bit more open plan, which was fine until we all started working from home and like sound travels in the house. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, sometimes I try to do these and my dishwasher or washing machine is going in the next room and the door only just keeps the sound out. But yeah. I don't hear anything now.
Okay.
Cool. So yeah, should I? You were kind of quite. No, you were quite well into that question. You just started talking about the SMWS. Yeah. Yeah.
So I got a job at the SMWS, and sort of like everything went from there as a result. And I actually ended up doing a second degree in distilling with the IBD. I got the diploma in distillation, and again, one of the best things that I ever did. It was really tough, but that pretty much cemented my love for Scotch and the fact that I really wanted to drive a career within it.
Some really formative years then. And the time that you spent at the SMWS, I'll try that again. And the time you spent at the SMWS, their focus is very much on the sort of the single cask and how individual each whiskey can be. Do you reckon that's a lesson you took strongly to heart?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think I learned so much there, and I'm still a huge advocate of the SMWS and single cask bottlings that come from them. I still buy one every now and again. What that taught me really was that casks are almost like snowflakes in a way. Every single one is different. Once they're gone, they're gone. And I've been able to take a lot of those learnings into future jobs after that. And at Bacardi, we have an exceptional cask program where we look at single casks, double casks, and small batches of whiskey. So I'm still able to get my kicks of single casks, but without afterlife of the SMWS.
So a lot of time spent learning, but now that you've reached the position where you are at, a very, very, very recognized face around the industry, you're Bacardi's ambassador of single malts, really big names, Altmore, Craigellachie, Deveron, and now you are starting to, well, you have been for quite a while teaching about whiskey yourself. You've been doing sort of public outreach and teaching people who aren't within the industry, but now you're also you're also educating at Bacardi internally. Do you think it's very different? Does it feel very different to be educating people within the industry? That's fine, because I was fluffing that.
That's fine. I'm really sorry.
That's okay. I'm actually quite glad to have another go at that one. Should the gardening be happening outside?
No, we're also looking at getting the bathroom extended and a new loft hatch put in place.
I guess actually lockdown has just lifted a bit down south, so I guess this is sort of people getting back to work when they can. Yeah,
which is great, and it's nice to be able to sort of help with that and get things on and sort of figure things out.
I'm sort of making my plans already of where to go and start like spending crazy money in all the places that I love, just to make sure that as soon as this is all over, they get right back into roaring business as much as they can.
Yeah, and you said you're in Edinburgh, right?
Yeah. It's Edinburgh recently has been, I don't know, for my taste, it's been doing really well in opening little places to sort of eat and chill or have a coffee or buy a book. Edinburgh's doing really well for like little businesses.
Nice. Whereabouts in Edinburgh are you?
Top of Leith, so
nice.
Kind of London Road area.
Yeah, I used to live on Barony Street, just off of Bolton Street.
Okay, yeah.
You know, the Broughton Street Deli.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice.
that's
Very
great.
good place to go. Yeah. We can also put a small delay on this if you like.
No, it's about to leave. It's fine. Sorry if you've got.
Okay, I'll run through this question in my mind again. I think I'll start from my question from the beginning again, because I didn't like the way I asked it. So
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Cool. So you spent a considerable amount of time learning about whiskey, but you've also now spent a considerable amount of time teaching about whiskey as well. You know, in your role as, you know, very recognizable role as Bacardi's ambassador of single malts, you have some really recognizable names in your stable, Altmore, Craigellachie, the Deveron, and you've been educating people about those. But now you're also looking more internally and educating inside Bacardi about the whiskey. Do you feel there's a big difference between educating people who know a lot about the industry already and those who don't?
A little, but not too much. I absolutely love working for Bacardi, and as the name suggests, we are essentially a rum company first and foremost with Bacardi, and then have other incredible spirits within the Bacardi family as the world's largest family-owned spirits company. So Grey Goose, Bombay Sapphire, Martini. So that means that not everything in the company is about Scotch whisky. So as a result, it's really exciting that myself and my colleagues, and as global ambassador, I almost act like mother hen or a supporting actor to all of our local ambassadors. So people across the world who I work with when I travel, from the US to Australia and China to Sweden and beyond. So it's really fun to be able to talk to not only people outside of the whiskey industry, but also people inside our company as well, because we all enjoy drinking whiskey. And whether you're the biggest whiskey pro in the world or the newest novice, there's always still something new to learn. And there's always a great discussion that can be had over a dram, right? Whether that be about the whiskey industry itself, whether that be about, you know, what's inside the glass, or whether that be about something about the bar you're in. And all of that is education in a way.
And of course, you also have the privileged position to be sort of caring for these very recognizable single malts. And are you allowed to have a favorite among the malts, or are you expected to, you know, treat all your children equally? Or do they all have different talents that can be brought out at different times?
I think more of the latter, a little bit of the former, but more of the latter in the sense that we're very lucky at Bacardi. We've got 5 amazing single malts from 5 different distilleries across the Highlands and in Speyside. And each one of those, there's no real overlap in terms of flavour. Each one of them is quite unique and distinctive with its flavour and also its personality as well, and what it brings forth to the glass. So, you know, I look at Aberthaldi and I think of big, rich honeyed notes that come through and a big fruity hit that we get from Aberthaldi distillery. I think of Craigellachie and you get that lovely muscular character from the worm tub condensers and oil fired malt. You then have Altmore that's super light and clean and fresh and seen as the top dresser within the blended within the blended whiskey world. You put a drop of Altmore into a blend and it just lifts all of those flavors up. You then have Royal Brackler standing proud up near Nairn on the Calder estate, where every one of the Royal Bracklers is finished on Oloroso casks. And then we have the Deveron, which I just like to think of as a warm hug in a mug. So you've got these 5 completely different whiskies for 5 different occasions, 5 different moods, and 5 almost different ways of drinking. So I do really enjoy Craigellachie. That's probably a big favourite of mine. And I love the delicateness and elegance that comes through with Altmore. Yeah, with the sort of the deeper, intense, more musky notes that come through as Altmore ages. So the 12 is very, very different to the 18-year-old. And Altmore 18 is probably my quarantine dram right now. I feel like my boyfriend and I drinking a responsible amount of that one.
Hmm.
And then, I'm no longer the most brilliant cocktail maker, but I do like to try and dab my hand at it. And Aberfeldy works so well in cocktails because of that smooth, fruity, honeyed richness that it has. And we'll often stir it down in an old fashioned using honey syrup instead of sugar syrup.
Mm-hmm.
Here in London, we've got so many amazing sort of urban beekeepers. So not only are we trying to support all of our local bars during this time, but we're trying to buy locally as much as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, it sort of it makes it easier for you, I guess, since each whiskey is very clearly doing its own thing. You don't have to get into a situation where I say, yeah, wait, I'm going to start that one again. Yeah, it really must work well that each whiskey so clearly does its own thing. It just makes it so much easier to love all of them for their own particular skills.
And particular nuances as well, you could say. I also think occasion plays a big part, and I don't know about you, but my Monday night dram is very different from my Wednesday night dram, which is very different from my Friday night dram.
I'm already actually from the 5 distilleries you mentioned trying to think which day of the week each one pairs with, and it does feel like maybe the Devon with that kind of warmth to it will sort of like console you at the end of the weekend and get things started nicely. This is something to think about in my own time, I guess. But another thing I wanted to ask about, a more recent project starting in 2018, you and Becky Paskin started Our Whisky. Could you tell us a little more about that, please?
Yeah, Becky and I, we've known each other for a very long time, and we realised within the whiskey industry it's growing and it's such a burgeoning place to be. And sometimes, however, the face of the true whiskey drinker isn't actually represented in what's going out. And I often get asked, not so much these days, but definitely 10 years ago when I first started, you drink whiskey? You don't look like you're the type of person to drink whiskey. And I think as the world itself has evolved and modernized, and not only gender boundaries have broken, but also just general boundaries have broken. The same can be said as to what's been happening to the whiskey drinker. Yet for a very long time, it's still been portrayed as the norm. So we decided to create Our Whisky to really combat that and to showcase the modern face of the whiskey drinker, and also to educate as well on what whiskey can be, and how, from an industry perspective, we should be talking a little bit more openly about whiskey, moving our demographic target away from being bounded by gender, and also educating whiskey drinkers, the current whiskey drinkers and the future whiskey drinkers. So breaking down what's inside the glass. And Becky and I bring loads of experience to the mix together. We're quite fortunate. We both won the Icons of Whiskey awards this year. Myself for the Scotch Whisky Ambassador of the Year award, and Becky for the Writer of the Year award. So so we bring quite a lot of that into it, and we're deadly passionate. I've got a call with her after this actually, but we're extremely passionate about growing the reach of whiskey for the benefit of the Scotch whisky industry.
And also for the benefit of the people who perhaps had been put off by the idea that they're not supposed to enjoy whiskey, and then when actually it's presented properly and maybe a bit more accessibly, so many people have discovered, actually, I love what's going on here. And it's really difficult to predict what a person is going to like. Like in my experience, you can't know who's going to like whiskey that's smokier or fruitier. There's maybe a little bias that the further north you go in Europe, the more smoke you like, people like in their whiskey, but otherwise age, gender, none of that seems to be predictive at all. So it's
But it's
really
funny
good.
you say that, because then we speak to people in sort of Sweden and Norway and in the further north of Europe, and they say, oh, we don't like whiskey because we assume all of it's smoky because that's all we see here. So, you know, it's quite interesting in that respect. You really have to throw all prior thoughts of what you think whiskey is kind of out the door. And you know, that can be done just by drinking whiskey in a glass. It can also be done through cocktails as well. And both of us love sitting at a bar and enjoying a whiskey cocktail. And that's how I got into whiskey. I think that's how a lot of people got into Scotch itself too. So, yeah.
That's really good to know, because I was starting to slowly build myself a new stereotype that maybe people prefer whiskey smokier. And then I was thinking of rationalizations for that. Well, maybe more smoked meat and smoked fish, maybe that predisposes. No, it's just that when you look deeper into it, that just happened to be what was on the market, and other people were being discouraged. So yeah, really valuable project. Awesome. Another break with convention was part of sort of a project you did with Craig Ellicky. So we're used to seeing 40-plus-year-old whiskey treated almost like a holy relic, untouchable, something to be locked away in a glass cabinet and venerated from a distance. And then you took a very different approach with, what was it, Club 51. Was it Club 51? Bar 51. You took a very different approach with Bar 51. So tell us a bit more about that, especially for those who sadly missed it.
So we found one cask from Craig Ellicky that was distilled on the 22nd of December in 1962. One single cask. Back when at the distillery, we had only 2 stills instead of 4. They were both directly fired, and we had our own maltings on site then as well. And it was left to slumber through 5 decades of history. They just rolled by one after the other. And when we found this cask, it was 51 years old. And not only that, but due to the angels share, or very happy angels, as we like to talk about in Scotland, we were left with just 51 bottles of it. And you're totally right. 51 bottles of Craig Ellicky 51, usually a whiskey like that. And I think we've seen a few examples of it since, have, you know, they're put into crystal decanters. They have a price tag attached to it, similar to the deposit we might have paid to have bought this house. And they would be put on a shelf, and they would be adored at from afar. And we wanted, as a team with Craig Ellicky 51, to bring whiskey back to what it's all about, which is clinking glasses with friends old and new and enjoying a dram. And the reason that the team back at the distillery back in 1962 probably made that whiskey, which was to be drunk and enjoyed with friends. So we decided to go against the norm and create almost the world's most uncollectible collectible whiskey. And we gave it away for free, dram by dram, at a series of pop-up events. And as someone once said, it's probably the most tried 51-year-old whiskey ever in the world. So we popped up with a mini bar, a bar within a bar, inspired by Japan's Golden Guy, across 4 different countries, the UK, London, the USA, and New York. We then went over to Australia, to Sydney, and then to South Africa with both Joburg and Cape Town. And over an 18-month period, we gave out the opportunity for anyone to enter their details onto our website and to be able to come down to this mini bar and join us for a tasting of Craig Ellicky 13, Craig Ellicky 17, Craig Ellicky 51, and then a Craig Ellicky 13 cocktail, all on us.
Yep, and I missed it, and I'm going to be kicking myself forever. So, but who knows? Maybe another 51-year-old cask will show up one day. But it's wonderful, really, that like for those people who tried it, they no longer had to take it on faith that incredibly aged whiskey is the nectar that we say that it is. They were able to experience it for themselves. It's really important just that some of this whiskey makes it out there so that people actually know what's up.
You probably know this yourself. Age and experience are 2 very different things. And older doesn't necessarily equal better. And a lot of the time there is this idea that an older whiskey is a much better whiskey. But you speak to a lot of master blenders and warehouse managers, and they'll tell you that they've found shocking old whiskies because they've been put into first fill casks and left for 50 odd years, and they come out tasting of wood. You know.
Yeah.
So what we wanted to bring it back to, though, was about the whiskey inside the glass, and we were very lucky that we found this whiskey where you had the perfect harmony between distillery character. You still got the sense of Craigellachie in this whiskey, even after 51 years, and that delicate, subtle influence of the oak cask that it had been laying in. And both of those interplayed very nicely next to each other. I think if it hadn't tasted nice, we probably would have gone down another tact entirely. But because it tasted so good, it would have been disappointing not to have been able to have shared it with others. You know, you're right. It's very rare that people get the opportunity to try old whiskies like this. And the nice thing about the pop-up was that we invited groups of 6 people at a time to enter bar 51, where we had a neon behind me, and I literally poured out to over 1,500 people Craigellachie 51, glass by glass by glass, right? And to be able to enjoy it in such an intimate environment with this small group of people created a lovely camaraderie and a celebration over whiskey, and conversations were made with people, between people that have never met before, and this bond created over scotch, which, you know, if you really think about what we do with whiskey for me is there to celebrate and commiserate. You know, it's there to clink glasses with friends old and new, and that's what we put it all back to. So it was an absolute joy to work on over that 18-month period. It was a joy for me to be able to pour all of that whiskey and to work with all of my colleagues across the world to really bring it to life and hopefully make it a truly special occasion for those people that were able to come down and join us.
Yeah, no doubt it was. That's truly wonderful.
Yeah.
So, alluding to the travel that you used to spend most of your time, well, a good chunk of your time doing at any rate, is there one trip among the many you've taken that was particularly memorable?
Gosh. There hasn't been one. Honestly, there has been so many. I think definitely the Craigellachie 51 project was a huge piece for me, just because we as a whiskey team had worked so hard to bring it to life, and then actually see it going in full motion and the joy it brought to people's eyes that was really special. I really do enjoy spending a lot of time in Scotland. I used to live there. I lived there in Edinburgh for 10 years. I only moved to London recently, and I absolutely love coming up to Scotland and spending time in the Highlands at the distilleries. I'm a keen cyclist and walker. I love coming up to Scotland and spending time in the distilleries. I'm a keen cyclist and walker, so any opportunity to actually get up there and be in the fresh air. And last time I went up to Craigellachie, we actually went canoeing down the River Spey with Dave Craig and the Spirit of the Spey Company, and we took some of our USA ambassadors on with us. And have you ever seen Speyside from the river, from River Spey?
Not from on the Spey, no. I've walked alongside it, but never been on it, actually.
Yeah, so I've walked alongside it. I've driven up and down that A9 time after time after time again, and round and about into every single distillery. But seeing Speyside from the water, from the River Spey, is something truly, it's really quite special. It just brings it to life in a whole new different way. So, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's going to have to get booked into my calendar when able to travel again. Speyside's not too far, just a few hours away by train from me here. So maybe that's the thing to do to celebrate the end of the lockdown.
Yeah, absolutely. Jump in your car and get up there. But yeah, I mean, look, I get to travel all across the world, and I'm very lucky with that. As you said before, I spend a lot of my year actually doing that. But I really do enjoy spending time in Scotland too. I mean, that's the reason we're all in this, right? Because of Scotland and because of that amber nectar that's created there. So it's really nice to be able to go back to the motherland, as it were.
Well, hopefully before too long, you'll be able to feel the sting of jet lag again when it happens.
Yeah, it feels like a distant memory, jet lag. I've got so used to sleeping properly, and almost 9 hours a night right now. I'm like, what's jet lag?
I have to say it's been really wonderful to talk with you today. And so if I can raise my glass to celebration and commiseration and everything turning out well. Georgie Bell, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.